The moment we've all been waiting for. Hello everybody, Musaboriman here, and today I'll be doing a review of Tales of Berseria, Namco's 16th main game in the Tales of series. Tales of Berseria came out in Japan on August 18th for the PS3 and PS4, and it will be coming to the rest of the world early next year on PS4 and PC via Steam. At the time of this video, the English version is not out yet, so I'm reviewing the Japanese PS4 version. Tales of Berseria was announced in June of 2015 at the Tales of Festival event in Japan. Later, it was revealed that this game, featuring a sole female protagonist named Velvet, would be a prequel to the team's previous game, Tales of Berseria, which had released in Japan in January of 2015. This prequel relationship with Berseria was meant to be reminiscent of the relationship between the games Tales of Fantasia and Tales of Symphonia, where Symphonia is also a distant prequel to the game that was made before it. Having knowledge of Berseria, either through its currently running anime or by playing or watching the game yourself, definitely enhances the experience of playing Berseria. However, just like Symphonia, Berseria in no way requires you to know anything about Berseria. Tales of Berseria is about a woman named Velvet who is on a quest for revenge due to an event that occurs 3 years prior to the start of this game. She must break out of prison and track down her target, all the while teaming up with a motley crew of morally ambiguous party members and NPCs. Everyone has their own goals and interests, but they work together out of convenience or necessity. One of the interesting things about Berseria is that unlike many Tales games where you are usually the good guys who sometimes have to make tough decisions or cause harm by mistake, here you play the role of what essentially amounts to the villains from most people's eyes. Well, I won't spoil any story bits, so for now I'll move on to the gameplay. In battle, your resource for attacks is the soul gauge, with each diamond representing a soul. By default, you start battles with 3 souls, but this can be increased to 5 via methods such as stunning an enemy, killing an enemy, inflicting a status ailment, or perfect dodging an attack, which causes a soul to pop out onto the field which you can then pick up. The number of souls you have determines the number of arts and quick steps you can perform in a row without pause. If you obtain a soul mid-combo, this extends your number of actions. This game uses a variant of the art tree seen in Graces and Berseria, but unlike those two games, here you can set whatever art you want anywhere in the 16 slots. You also later gain the ability to do art extensions by holding a button during the art to chain one art into another, written in yellow on the menu. You can also do this with magic by holding the button during a spell and pressing L2 once. Furthermore, you also get the ability to map 4 arts to a shortcut of L1 plus each of the face buttons so that you can access a particular move at any time you want, regardless of your progression along the art tree. I find this especially useful for mapping magic and support spells. There is also a mechanic called the Break Soul, the function of which varies by character. Each character has up to 3 Break Soul abilities in-game. When you perform a Break Soul, you lose a diamond, reducing the number of actions you can perform. However, doing the Break Soul restores some health and resets your chain of actions back to the beginning of the art tree. As long as you have at least 3 souls, you can keep using your Break Soul. So if you're gaining souls back mid-combo, you can pull off long chains of actions. Conversely, if you're down below 3 souls, you're going to have a rough time, in which case you might want to use the Switch Blast, where you swap in a character who does an attack as they come in. Every art will reduce points from your soul gauge, however. You'll see the diamonds turn red as you use arts. So you can't just spam forever, since if you completely drain the gauge, you can barely quickstep at all, and all your attacks will get repelled by enemies. So that was the basic breakdown of combat. Now let's get into the pros and cons of the game as a whole. Starting with the pros. The game looks good and runs smoothly, with battles running at 60 FPS on the PS4 version. The combat is fluid and responsive, and manages to be just plain fun to play most of the time. The player is given several tools to play around with, and all the characters are fun to play as, allowing players of different styles to pick their favorites. There are many fun references to past Tales games, especially with the ship excavation, where the names of the islands reference many games and even the spin-offs. The plot maintains a good pace throughout. Unlike the past 3 console titles, this one never really drags or randomly rushes through parts. I do feel a particular character's motives feel kind of strange towards the end, but it's not too big of a deal. As usual for Tales, the cast is made up of fun, interesting characters with colorful personalities. I'd also like to mention that Rina Sato, the voice actress for Velvet, deserves a special mention for doing such an amazing job as this character. When you play it, you'll likely agree with me. Unlike Shilia 2 and Berseria, this game doesn't force certain party compositions on you. allowing you to do whatever you want for your party setup. Also, you can walk around freely as any character on the map, like past games. Personally, I'm glad to see the return of resurrection spells, as those were sorely missing in Berseria. Also, party AI is improved from Graces and Berseria. Here, they can actually dodge enemy attacks reliably. Unfortunately, as with some other Tales games, they are prone to not doing what you want at times, but overall, they weren't really troublesome to me. There's a good amount of side quests and post-game content here as well. They add more to the characters and lore of Berseria and Berseria. Overall, I have few actual problems with the game. In fact, very few of my issues with the game detracted from my enjoyment of it. There are only a few things, really. I think they tried to address the issues of the past 3 console games when making this one. Moving on to the cons. It takes a while to get a second party member, which can be a problem for those who want to play co-op from the very beginning. My little sister was watching me play, and she was wondering when she'd get to jump in. I think it took me about 3 hours to get to the part where you get a second party member. There's a bit of backtracking in this game, with one particular area requiring you to visit it several times, and you kind of have to walk through it every time. The music alternates between being pretty good and just kind of being there, but there are definitely some standout tracks, and every character has their own theme, something we have not seen since Symphonia. Overall, though, the soundtrack is inferior to Zestiria's. Please come back, Goshina. Not really a con, but the field areas are smaller than Zestiria in most cases, but that's not such a bad thing. They're kind of in between the size of the Shilias and Zestiria. However, your running speed is pretty slow compared to the size of some areas, and you don't get the speedier method of travel, the rare board, until pretty dang far into the game. You do get a 10% running speed boost at some point earlier than that, but that's not much. Also, I'm not too sure about the difficulty balance in this one. It's kind of hard to describe. Like, sometimes it's too easy, other times, you know, if a boss fight goes south, you have a hard time turning it around. You'll have to scrape by with less souls than you want. Basically, losing souls is a huge punishment, because if you have less than 3, you can't even do a break soul, so you need to switch people in and out so that they can regain souls off the field. But just losing souls is a huge punishment enough, but it's often topped by getting a status ailment and or getting stunned. And when you have a status ailment in this game, you can't be healed unless that healing spell also takes off the ailment. There are definitely some tough boss fights in here though, and wandering enemies and dangerous encounters can make things troublesome if you're not prepared. I'm not happy that the already nerfed healing is nerfed further on hard mode, which is the difficulty setting I use for most of the game. The game encourages you to use break souls as a way to regain health, and it works, so that's fine, but if you're out of souls, you're screwed because healing magic isn't going to help you all that much. There are later tier healing spells that do more, and that's nice, but it's going to be a while before you actually get them. The game does a much better job at developing the main characters and some of the antagonists and supporting casts than Zestiria. However, due to the nature of the story, the main antagonist is a little flat at times. The bonus dungeon is also somewhat of a pain, but it's not the first time there's been an annoying bonus dungeon in an RPG. In conclusion, the game focuses on what the Tales team is capable of, rather than overextending themselves by being too ambitious like they were with Exilia 1 and Zestiria. However, on the flip side, you can feel that lack of ambition in places, and the lack of risk-taking in this game. Nevertheless, they delivered a polished, well-made product and a good Tales game, but it feels kind of like they were just sort of making up for past mistakes. Even so, this game is a fun one, and it feels like they're possibly setting up to do something more ambitious with their next one, which will probably be on PS4 only, allowing them to pull off something more impressive in scope and technologically speaking. This is a good game, a good Tales game, definitely worth it for any fan of the series or action RPGs in general. So yeah, get out there, play this game, or, you know, obviously you gotta wait for the English version if you don't speak Japanese, but yeah, when it comes out, jump on it. That's all for now, see you next time. Musabori Man out.